Hello, Internet. Welcome back to Legacy Partners, I believe. Almost a legacy conversation, same thing, whatever, no difference. We have Kevin Johnson here with us. He's talking to us about entrepreneurship. Now, there are people who say you cannot be an entrepreneur, you've got to be born one. And there's a lot of people who say, no, that's not true. You can learn the basics, at least the basics. Now, Kevin, you're a man who explained to us in the last episode how you left the army, you did well at the bank, and then from there on you decided you're going to go on your own. So I wonder if you can tell us in short 10 minutes, whatever long it takes you, what happened in your private career then?
Well, I had a friend that worked at a bank that I used to compete against, and him and I always knew that we would have to be self-employed one day. So, the bank gave me the opportunity to come up with new ideas, new things, etc. But, there's a limit to the sort of freedom that they can give you. So we knew the timing was right. And the interesting thing that I learned later on in life about entrepreneurialism is that timing and a bit of luck plays a big role. So we had both timing and luck. And so we went out because what was actually happening in the motor industry back in South Africa is that, this was around 89. Yep, it was because I remember we had the Buttons that actually invited us to the closing of 3-2 Battalion in Buffalo. And it was around about that time that I went self-employed. So basically what I did is, in South Africa, I'm sure all those who have bought new cars would have experienced what I'm going to share with you now, because I picked up finance and insurance expertise at Westbank. So if you look at all new car dealerships, especially the big ones in the big cities in South Africa, in the old days, this is like sort of the 70s and the 80s before we came up with our concept, you'd go into a dealership and you would deal with a salesperson, you'd buy the car, and then if the dealership was big enough, they'd take you to the bank on the floor, and the bank would then tidy up all the finance and insurance requirements. So what we had worked out, having had experience on the bank side, that most of the profits in the finance and insurance was actually kept by the bank, and very little was given to the dealer. And if you consider the dealer has to make a huge investment for their bricks and mortar and all those vehicles and all the equipment in the workshop and that. And we thought, well, hold on, we've got a concept that can get more profit into the hands of the dealer. So what we did, and this is where we had to be courageous, is because sitting on all those dealership floors, especially the bigger ones, were banks, and they were doing it for free, but keeping the bulk of the profit. So we went to the dealers and we said to the dealers, look here, if you give us your numbers, we'll forecast where we can get you to, but then it's going to require a monthly investment. And fortunately, there were enough early adopters in South Africa, most of them entrepreneurial-owned dealerships, not like the McCarthy's or the Bidvests of this world or Imperial, but more the guys that owned 1 or 2 dealerships. So we found a couple of early adopters. And fortunately for us, when we put our people on the floor now, after they paid all the expenses, the money they banked was far more than what they were getting from the bank. So the game was actually on, from the dealer's perspective, to say free is very costly. And then we were very fortunate, right place, right time. And the reason why I say that is that the car dealerships were coming under huge pressure because the manufacturers were discounting the cars. So there wasn't much margin in the cars. So they needed our new profit center that we had brought to the dealership, all finance, all insurance, and all the accessories that go with the purchasing of a new and used vehicle. So basically what happened is, that was around 1989. So we got some very good growth very quickly. And we relocated our head office from Cape Town up to Johannesburg. And then in about the 4th year, we had the bank that I worked for, Westbank, starting to speak to us because they they stood to lose the most because they dominated the floors. So they were not happy that we were taking over from their people. So they started to pursue us for about a year. And really what it was all about, they wanted to buy into the business. We said we'll sell 49. They wanted 51. So we were in deadlock. So about after a year, we sort of agreed, because we'd got to know one another, that we would go for a 50-50. So once they came on board, over a period of time, they seconded about 280 people, including some directors. So we had now a real nice team to attack the market out there. In a nutshell, what it helped them to do was to do the joint ventures with the manufacturers like Nissan Finance, Toyota Finance, Delta Finance, VW Finance, because we had this unique proposition now that was very profitable for the dealership. So got involved and we grew it. And then I started to get the feel, was more from the wife's side, that she wanted to leave South Africa. So I started to sell my shares, and then eventually that ran for about from 1989 to 2001. So then we upped. I came ahead because I had to get fixed up with something over here. It wasn't just a question of getting on the plane. You had to actually come over here, get interviewed, find work, etc. And then in May of 2001, I came over here and I got involved in some consultancy work in the motor industry, because I thought that was going to be the best way to actually learn the industry and then decide, what type of business. And I was very fortunate. I met an English lady over here, but when I say English lady, obviously for business reasons. And I then said to her, why don't this concept of business managers on the floor, they had it here as well. It's probably even more entrenched here. So what I then discovered over here in about 2004, 2005, e-commerce was actually starting to take off. So in other words, it wasn't just a question of, in those days, just going onto Google or Overture or Yahoo to search things. Companies were now actually starting to sell things on the internet. So what I said to her is, why don't we take some of the products that get sold on the dealer floor, like the breakdown insurance, the gap insurance, the tire insurance. Why don't we become a brokerage and sell that direct to the end user in the UK, cutting out all the middle people? So what actually happened there was, it was around 2004. We started off as a broker first to see whether this thing actually had legs. And once we got nice momentum, we then decided we no longer wanted to be a broker. We now wanted to be an insurer. But you can't just become an insurer. That's humanly impossible. So what we did is we then approached some organizations, and Hollard Insurance was starting to open up here in Europe. And they said, look here, they will come on board as a partner. So from that moment on, we were actually then an insurer, because now we weren't just making money on the selling of the product, but if we looked after the underwriting correct, then there would be surplus there, which means that the dividends would be better. So we ran that one nicely. I was probably involved in that for 2004 to about 2016, 2017. And then slowly what happened is we started to sell out our shares to the insurer. Because one thing I have learned in life is that once you sell, even if you got the same amount of voting rights, just by the mere fact that they beg, they start to slow down innovation. And one thing I discovered is with those two partnerships that I had is that they see improvement, okay? They see improvement as new. whereas I see new totally different. New is new, and improvement is improvement. So that was the one thing I learned out of the whole exercise. And then basically what happened is I then started to do some consultancy work where I was looking then for my next one. But I made up my mind in the next one, it's not going to be something that I sell. So I'd always, in those two previous businesses, loved how far you could take technology in your business. So this time around, I decided, I'm going to invest into a small firm that's actually a technology-based business. Not a product, insurance, not a consultancy business, but actually a tech firm. And so we found ourselves a very good niche. Okay, we've been going at it now for about 3.5 years, 4 years. We're up to about 700 clients using the software. And we've kept narrowing our target market to get to the sweet spot. And basically, what we now focus on is franchisors that have a knowledge-based product, and they're busy franchising it. Because one thing I realized, having worked in dealerships, when people mention franchises to me, I always think of it as like a building with lots of things in it. But as the world's now evolving, I'm discovering that the knowledge industry has become very big. And so this industry that we've gone into, according to these consultancy organizations, their industry is like $500 billion a year. So, we can go on a very, very long journey with this one, because as the world gets disrupted, there seems to be more coaches, consultants, and advisors out there. Some of them good, and some of them very crap. But the ones we like working with, are people that have bought a franchise from a franchisor. And there's a lot of these very, very good consultants who are now starting to franchise out their solution because they know it works. So let's say they're London-based and they know it works in London and it's an international sort of knowledge solution that they're selling. Well, nothing's stopping them from actually franchising it out worldwide. So there's a guy, for example, we're working closely with his franchises now, who is operating out of Australia, and they are a business coach company. And he's got about almost 450 franchisees that have bought his franchise. And I mean, from these franchisors' perspectives, because they're not our clients, the franchisor, the franchisees are our clients, but the franchisor, I mean, some of them sell their packages at quite a hefty amount. And, their solution that they give to their franchisees, it's not bricks and mortar and materials and that. It's just all cloud solutions, videos, workbooks, so on and so forth. So that's really where we are at the moment. The one thing I also did is, because I knew I was going to get into the tech business, I said to myself that I've gone on a journey through Singularity University to know the power of how technology can disrupt, how agile you got to be. So you got to have the right mindset. So there was no ways I was going to partner with people anywhere near my age. So both my fellow directors are of my age.
Well, I must tell you that a lot of the listeners here, I'm sure, comes from the environment where you go to university, you get your degree, you start working at a company. 40 years later, if you're lucky, you get your watch and pension, and you're told to go away, and somebody else replaces you, of course. or both parents worked full-time as salaried people, not business. And so to them, such people, and I say this with respect, some of them see doing business almost as something shameful. It's not really what they want to do. They want to have a job, an income, live according to their means. But sadly, we know in South Africa and many other places, that's not possible.
No,
It is just not possible. It's not the modern way. I'm not going to tell you politically why why that thing is not going to work in South Africa, but it's called affirmative action. And more than that, I don't want to go into, but as a lawyer, as a legal man, I can tell you it's the only country in the world, in the history of the world, where affirmative action was done onto a minority group. Normally, it's the other way around.
Yeah.
And it has never worked anywhere in the world anyway.
Yes,
so you come here right at the time, Kevin. We're really grateful for you because you've always been a man who saw a gap. I mean, you enlisted in the army to learn certain skills. And from there on, you actually used those skills. First, you went to the bank, you learned even more skills. But you were silly enough not to sign a restraint of trade agreement with you.
No, fortunately not.
So, tough to those lawyers. I don't like banks. I even wrote a book on how to screw banks.
Well, when the bank bought my shares, I think the restraint of trade was 82 pages.
But perhaps you can just quickly tell us what is a franchisee and a franchisor.
Well,
if you can perhaps take McDonald's or something which everybody
Yes. So, take things that we all understand, motor cars. So BMW is the franchisor. And then the franchisee would be like Bidvest, Imperial. So they're the dealers that actually sell the cars. Now, obviously, because the industry is evolving so much, the franchisor, who is the manufacturer, can also own some of the dealerships. So he's franchisor and franchisee.
Yeah.
So in our case, we work with franchisors who have decided to package their knowledge and franchisee it out. And so then our solution is a marketing software solution for the franchisee. So our clients are not the franchisor.
Now, may I ask you, what would be the best practices? Because best practices, if I understand the concept correctly, is what worked. People has paid the school fees. It's like a formula. It's like shooting a firearm or something. There's a certain way you do it. Otherwise, you're in danger.
Yes, absolutely. So, that's why towards the end of the session, I'll introduce them to the 8 mindsets that I live by. And because I've settled those mindsets down now in my life, and my fellow directors use it, we now know that as long as we strengthen those mindsets that I'm going to share with the audience towards the end of this video, then we know we can just keep growing every quarter. So we have a 25-year vision, but then we look at results every quarter. So we don't have a 3-year plan, a 6-year plan. I mean, a lot of those things, 2-year, 4-year, 5-year plan, I see it with a lot of people that are starting out in business where they go to an accountant and the accountant does wonderful spreadsheets, 4, 5, 6 pages. Quite frankly, you can write the numbers when you start a business on the back of a box of cigarettes, because all that will happen with the accountant is the accountant will just move the numbers up till it looks good and charge you.
Yes, I've never heard of a good accountant who's also a good entrepreneur, except perhaps Saul Kisner.
But in terms of best practices and the type of mindsets that you've got to have and the attitude you've got to have and the ambition that you've got to have, that'll all be covered in a very systematical way over the next 8 weeks as we go through these 8 mindsets.
So what do you want the listener to do, Kev? If a guy's listening here and he's still here with us, and I hope a lot is.
Well, we're going to do a little exercise.
Take notes or.
Well, I would suggest the way we handle this is that we will talk like this. And in many cases, rather than it just being a story to tell, we'll do a couple of exercises and then you can be the student quiz. And
yes,
then,
I'm sure I will be humiliated, but that's fine.
Yep. And then you can obviously then say, Kev, I don't understand this. Could you explain that again? Because that's going to be of tremendous help to the listeners. And then what we can do at the end of each session, we'll put a little workbook down at the bottom below the video, and we'll run it then in a proper sequence over the next sort of 8 to 9 sessions.
That's excellent.
Right.
That's
so
excellent. I'll be the guinea pig.
Okay, well, I mean, are there any other questions before we get going?
No, not really. No,
Okay.
no. I'm curious to see this.
Right.
I mean, I've attended a lot of conferences and things. So I would like to hear.
So here goes on what, because what I'm going to basically do is share with you and with the listeners a lot of the things that I've learned, mistakes I've made. Also, real mentors that I appreciate, because I believe that if you can have a mentor, but the right type of mentor, a practitioner who knows what he's talking about and not some theorist, then you could move much quicker, much faster, much easier, much cheaper, much better, because then you're learning from the master. So the sad thing about it out there in the coaching industry, there's just too many theorists and not real practitioners. So my advice is, if you're going to get a mentor, make sure they're a proper practitioner. They've done it before, or they've done something very similar before. So I want to now start off with a little exercise, because I'm mindful of the time, but here goes. So around about 2005, I'm sitting at the Savoy Hotel, which is a beautiful hotel here in London, and I'm having a chat to this guy, and I then discover he's actually the main speaker at this conference that I'm going to. And he's a chappie from American, but lived almost his whole life in Toronto in Canada. And he asks me, what am I doing? I said, no, I've got into e-commerce. He goes, wow, he says, not many people in e-commerce, and what made you make that decision, and what type of guy are you that you're prepared to venture into something that it's still like early days. I said, well, I have a military background. He said, oh, that's very interesting. He said, I'm a war vet. I go, oh, this is interesting, because he's the main speaker at this big event. And apparently, he's a very well-known man, etc. And he said, yes. He said, I was a war vet in the North Korean War. So let me just fast forward today and say that this guy's 78 years of age, and his business is screaming ahead. The checks that he gets written out into his business is huge, and there's just no let up to this man. So I said to him, I know that you're going to be speaking to the audience, and I'm going to be in the audience for at least about an hour, but seeing you sitting next to me here on the sofa, and you've just said to me, gosh, I'm really thankful for this input, Kevin, you've given me about how e-commerce and that all works, and that I then said to him, well, you have to give me, now over here they call it golden nuggets. You need to give me a golden nugget. He looks at me and he goes, okay. He said, how about this one? He said, would you like to live longer? And when he says live longer, I'm not one of these skeptical people or want to damper the conversation by saying things like, yeah, but it depends whether I'm going to be healthy to live longer or whether I'm going to be unhealthy. I'm not that type of person, because when a man asks you that question, obviously he's talking about a good life, healthy, etc., etc. So I said to him, oh, absolutely, Dan. He said, right, grab a piece of paper. So I'm saying this now to you, of course. Grab yourself a piece of paper, and down at the bottom of the piece of paper, exactly in the middle, so at the bottom of the page, in the middle of the page, just a little square that you can put 3 digits into. So just a small little box. Then you come up the page halfway. And then halfway, you put another little square. And then right at the top of the page, you put 2 little boxes.
2 of them. Side
2
by
little
side
boxes.
or in the middle?
Next to one another, but in the middle.
Okay.
So basically, you're looking at 4 boxes at the moment, and they're very small boxes. Right. So today, in that box right at the bottom,
Yes.
you put your age. I don't need to know what it is. This is an exercise for you and the audience as well. You put your age in that little box.
Yes. It's here.
Right. Now, based on where you are in your life, your health, okay, your background, your parents, so on and so forth, okay, put a now number in that middle box in the middle of the page when you think you're going to die. And you're dying from natural causes.
Right.
Okay, so you got that number there. Okay,
Yes.
now that number, Chris, doesn't interest me at all. Okay, what I'm more interested about is the year before you're going to be dying. Okay, the year before you're going to be dying. So you now know what that year is because you've just put a number in that middle box.
Yes.
Okay, so what I want you to do is just spend a couple of minutes on this exercise and just write down there, how would you like to feel physically? How would you like to feel physically a year before you're going to die? Okay.
Yeah.
So how would you like to be feeling mentally?
Right.
What position would you like to be in financially?
Right.
Okay. What sort of friends and relationships would you like to be having?
Yeah, that's done.
Okay. And then lastly, what sense of purpose would you be wanting in your life?
Right.
Okay, so here's a question. Would it then be fair to say, Chris, if that's how you're feeling physically, mentally, your financial position is good, you've got good relationship, good friends, and you have, big purpose still in life, would it be fair to say that you're probably not going to die that next year?
No, it will take an act of God. I'm at a fairly happy place.
Yes. So therefore, okay. So if it be fair to say you're not going to be dying that next year, how many more years do you think you're probably going to live?
Well, you want the figure?
You can now you put that figure at the top box.
The left or the right?
The one to the right. Yeah, the right.
Okay. I'm not from a family which lives long, Kevin.
That's fine.
That's fine.
That's fine.
Okay.
Okay. So basically what you now do is you take that new number and you subtract that number that you were supposed to die on. Subtract the one number from the other. And the difference is the extra number of years you've just bought yourself in this last 15 minutes of discussion.
That's clever.
Okay, so you've now got that new number. If you wish to share it, you're more than welcome.
Yeah, I don't mind sharing it.
The actual extra numbers.
Can you read here?
Nope, I can't see it.
No,
So what is the extra years?
The extra years is 10 extra years.
Okay, so you've got 10 extra years. So keep the momentum going here with this exercise. Could you maybe just spend a couple of minutes now writing down what you're actually going to be doing
with the extra years?
With those extra years.
Aha. Right, I've done that.
Okay, so what we're now going to do is we're now going to ease ourselves in to the 8 mindsets. And I'm not sure whether you can bring those 8 mindsets up on the screen.
I'm not sure if I can do it here, but I can definitely do it.
Okay, well, no problem.
No
problem at all.
Right in front of us.
Okay, so no problem at all. So basically, we're going to have this PDF anyhow below the video. So basically, rather than just telling you, it's better that people experience it. But the one thing I will tell you up front is that when I did this exercise, it had such a profound impact on me that it started to change the way I think, behave, everything. And for an entrepreneurial person, that's very important. So then I went hunting to find out what are the mindsets that I need to be able to take advantage of that exercise that you've just done. Because I could clearly see for an entrepreneurial man, that had tremendous value. Because bear in mind, ambitious entrepreneurial people who are doing things that they love, they don't have any thoughts in their mind of retiring. Because they create a business where they're on retirement already. You know, they can go on holiday whenever they want to. They can work whenever they want to. They got staff that are doing the work for them. And that just made me think, wow, I've now got a huge amount of extra years that I can play the game I love, which is entrepreneurialism. So what then actually happened, I progressed and started to come up with the mindsets. And bear in mind, I already had some of these mindsets. And I then met a chappie who was an American fighter pilot and had done about 50 sorties off the aircraft carriers, most of them in the Iraq war. And he showed me something where I went, wow, because he's got a concept once he left the actual Air Force over there, where he works with Fortune 500 directors, and he's designed a concept where he's got something called from the cockpit. So he was quite a senior guy. So if he's going on a mission in the evening, they're going to bomb, and he's got 2 jets to the left starboard and 2 to the port, and himself, he's got to run that whole ops from that little cockpit. So you can imagine the stress and the courage and everything that goes down with a mission like that. So he basically created workbooks, and he now takes on Fortune 500 directors and he charges them big fees. But what he discovered okay, is that it's not in his interest to be involved with people that have the wrong mindsets, because mindsets makes your world, because mindsets determines your behavior, and your behavior determines how you're going to act. So it's no use him having something phenomenal there if he's playing with directors that don't have the mindsets. So what I did for that extra years that I bought, in that exercise that you've done there, I went hunting for the mindsets. And he showed me a template, and I kid you not. On this template that he had, it was an A4 in landscape. And for his particular world that he works in and what he coaches and trains people in, he had 8 mindsets. And then he had these 4 columns where you measure yourself. And there was 4 columns, so it was 8 times 4 was 32. And I sat there and I started to smile. Now, I had told him a little bit about my background. He said, "Why are you smiling?" I said, "Well, I only served in 1 unit for my military." And I said, "We had 8 companies. Alpha Bravo Charlie Delta Echo Foxtrot Golf and the mortar. So we had 8 companies. You've got 8 mindsets. I will be having 8 mindsets. No more, no less." And then I said, "I can't believe it. For each of your mindsets, you got 4 categories. So 8 times 4 is 32. I said, "That was my unit." So decades ago, I started to create my template that we're now going to share with the public. And it's 8 mindsets, and there's 4 columns. 8 times 4 is 32. So I thought, well, hold on. That must be a good omen for me. So what I'd like to do, so that we can then commence with really putting some real structure together around entrepreneurialism when we do the next session, is to get yourself, I'll do it as well, and those who are interested, and I'm going to come back to listen to the next one, is that in the PDF at the bottom of the video, when you open up the PDF, you're going to see 8 mindsets. And then what you're going to do is you're going to read from left to right. And you're going to score yourself where you are. And you put that in the first column. And then where you'd like to be. You put that in the second column. You go to number 2. You do exactly the same thing. Where do you think you are when you look at those 4 boxes? If it's not exactly where you are, well, more or less where you are, and where would you like to be? You do that 8 times. Then you can basically just down at the bottom, add up the 1 column. That'll give you a total number as to where you are. And then in the second column, you add it up, and it'll give you a total where you'd like to be. And then it's my commitment, okay, to the people that want to progress with these 8 freedoms, to help you to move from where you are and where you'd like to be. Now, when you open up that PDF, you'll notice it's going to ask you, where would you like to be in the next 90 days?
That's quick.
Yes. And that is all around the mindsets that's needed for you as an entrepreneurial person to get the freedom that you're seeking. Because what I discovered in working with entrepreneurial people that are very successful, ultimately what they're seeking is freedom. And the freedom that they're seeking is freedom of purpose. In other words, to be pursuing things they love doing, where they have great passion. They like to have the freedom of their time, freedom of money, and freedom of relationships. In other words, not just in their private life, but also prospects, clients, partners, associates, staff members. They want to be in a position to have the freedom of choosing who they want on board. That's ultimately what an entrepreneurial person wants. So it's probably about 400 entrepreneurial people that are hugely successful have come up with those four. There can obviously be others, but the critical edge happens to be those four. So needless to say, you'll see those four on that particular scorecard.
And once you've done that, you've identified your goals.
Yes, so now you know where you are with the mindset and where you'd like to be. And then what will actually happen is next week, we'll grab the first one. The first one is freedom through courage. Freedom through courage. So in other words, courage gives you more freedom in the entrepreneurial world. So what we'll do is we'll concentrate on the workbook so that you can see that you've already been courageous in your life before, but now you'll have a formula and a process to accelerate your courage in the business world. And we'll focus on that in the next video. Then obviously we'll move to the next one, and eventually we'll get down to number 8.
And we're going to have live sessions too. I just want to say, if people here feel a bit lost now, and just keep with it. Keep with it. You will get it at some stage.
Yes, I can show you now when we open up, we do the next video, then it'll all start to come together. Well, providing obviously they're prepared to do the exercise and go away and implement the stuff. It's generic, so you can apply it to any entrepreneurial position. I won't be keeping it industry specific. What I also say to people, as you go through the 8 mindsets, you might actually find for you as a human being, you want to drop 1 or 2 of them and add 1 or 2, and that's fine with me.
And it worked for you.
Absolutely. And my partners, when I invested into them, I said, you know, guys, I'd like to come and play the game with you, because obviously I came up with the idea of what the tech must all be about. And I said, I'm interested in dealing with you. I can see you got the tech expertise, but more important of all, I need to see whether you have the mindsets, because I like to play with people that are courageous, are serious about a purpose, money, time, relationships, using technology in your business, goal-directed habits.
Because it's not going to happen by itself. I mean, you can actually win the lotto here by just following the mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And as I said, you know, it's timeless, which is great. It means you don't have to chop and change it every 12 months, and you can apply it in any industry. So I coined the phrase, every home, every business, because, you know, in the business world, especially in the corporate world, you'll progress through life and people will say to you, so what's your position? Are you a CFO or you're a CEO or a CMO? And they just go on and on and on and on. So I got a bit tired of those type of comments. So one day I just came up with my own sort of acronym, and I said, no, I'm the CCO. They go, oh, I've never heard of that before. I said, yeah, I'm the Chief Courageous Officer in my firm. So this ex-war vet from the Korean War, he once said to me one day, he said, you know, Kev, you were obviously in a fighting unit. So he said, you must have had experience throwing hand grenades. I said, yeah, you know, hand grenades is a funny thing because you do it early in your career and you go into the dugout and there's a qualified sergeant standing there with you. And then you've got to get into the position where the one hand's got to be up here and the other one at the back, and you've got to come up nicely. And as you get to the top, you've got to let it go, and you're crapping yourself. And he said, yeah, that's exactly what it is. He said, you know, now that we've been speaking about courage, he said, someone once asked me, what is fear? He said, well, when you throw in that hand grenade and you wet your pants, That's fear. Courage is actually doing something about those wet pants. And I thought to myself, that was a brilliant way of summarizing it. And that's what it is about in business. You know, if you go back into your successes that you've had in your career and that, you will notice it's when you come out of your comfort zone. And that's what we're going to focus on. What is the formula? What is the process, okay, to come more out of your comfort zone? Because it's just like going to the gym and building biceps. Courage is just a muscle.
I recall once I was speaking to a Mossad officer, the Israeli intelligence people, very senior man, and he said to me, courage is like a wallet full of money. And while you take this money out, no problem. But then one day, there's no more money.
Yes.
And you're behind enemy lines, and now you have to reach deep, and that's where real courage starts.
Yes. Now, the beauty of it in the business world is I always say to people, when you commit to do something that you don't have the skills yet, that requires you to go through a period of courage. But it's great because when you come out of the other side, you're going to come out with a new capability. And that's what entrepreneurialism is all about, building new capability all the time. And when you're in that box of courage, there's really a chemical thing going on there. When you get the mixture of fear and excitement, then you know you're onto something. And then the more you commit, okay, the less period of time you need to stay in the courage box. And guess what? When you come out of the courage box and you got the new capability, your confidence goes up. And when the confidence goes up, it gives you the commitment then again to want to come across and commit. And I've seen with many of my friends, they slacked off on the commitment and courage side as they get older. They say, oh, I don't have to do that anymore. And then when you speak to them after a number of years, they go, I'm not feeling the same anymore. And the reason being, if you don't come over to build the muscle of commitment and courage, and you want to stay in your comfort zone of capability and confidence, I have discovered, and many others who I've spoken to, that confidence actually has an expiry date. So in other words, if you're not building new capability, your confidence starts to slip. And probably, of course, more so today than ever before, because the world is evolving so quickly. So you can't rest on your laurels.
No, you can't. It reminds me of the woman who gone to university, or she got a good job, and she meets a guy, fall in love, get married, have kids. Now, 15 years later, she's ready to go back to the workplace. But now she feels, wow, we're using computers. She was using something else. And then she loses confidence. And the problem that I've seen in my legal career is confident people do get ahead. I'm sad to say that, but they actually do, because nobody wants to do business with somebody who feels sorry for himself. He's just not there. Guy, please, that doesn't work, people. It does not work. You know, I've had people coming to me saying that perhaps you should go to someone and, say, really, please, sir, I need this job, blah, blah, blah. He's not going to hire you. That's my experience. Of course, I might be wrong. But in my experience, it's better to walk in there and say, well, you're damn lucky to get me. Let's talk about money. You can double it. That's an extreme example. I don't know how you feel about it, but success attracts success.
I look at confidence more the way the brain works. And the thing is, some people will say to me, but Kev, I just want confidence. And I say, well, unfortunately, the brain doesn't work like that, because confidence only comes after you've acquired capability. They go, well, I want capability. I go, well, where does capability come from? You've got to be courageous. Well, where does courageous come from? You've got to start off by being committed. So the 4 boxes work like that. Starts at the 12 o'clock, goes down to the 3, goes to the 6, goes to the 9, goes to the 12, and it will never change, because that's the way the brain works. So that's what we'll be focusing on in the next video, which is, building more capability and confidence through committing and being courageous. And the one thing I must say, no one's going to feel when they go through that exercise that they're starting, from scratch, because we've all been through it before. The only problem is we might not do it enough because we've been doing it subconsciously. But now, after the next session, at least you'll have the template, you'll have the formula, you'll have the process. And I can tell you one thing, when you are being the chief courageous officer in your business, staff love working with someone who's the chief courageous officer. And the good news for you is you can then allow them to go away and start being courageous in what they're doing. So therefore, you can then have multiple courageous little strategies going on in your business rather than everyone staying in their comfort zone.
So if I can summarize this for us, for those who've listened up to here, go down below, you will find the link. That link will open the 8 mindsets for you. We want you to complete all 8 of them.
By scoring yourself where you are,
yes,
and where you'd like to be, which is the 2 columns at the end, add them up. Now you know what your total score is, where you are, and where you'd like to be. You also have a score for each of the 8. And then what will actually happen is when we get together again, we'll start getting into a workbook to move you from where you are on courage to where you'd like to be. And then the following week, we go down to the next one.
So from strategic, we're going into tactical.
Correct.
If we use army terms.
Yeah. But at least now you know you've got an extra number of years to live.
Yeah, I'm quite surprised actually about that. That was a good exercise for me, Kevin. I never felt like that. Thanks.
Oh, it's 3-2 battalion thinking, Some people will say, oh yeah, you buggers up there, you used to venture outside the box. I said, just say that again. No, you guys were sort of outside the box. I said, no, mate, if you came out up there, you would have discovered we were outside the box all the time.
Despite having your famous box formation.
Yeah.
So it turned into a boxing match. Well, we can play with words here. This is actually quite funny. But there are lots of skills. I mean, I want people to understand something. You have skills. It's not that you don't have skills, it's because you don't understand.
Not at all.
The only thing which makes a lawyer quite clever in some people's eyes, not mine, with me all mine, is the fact that he studied law before he has in-depth knowledge. The same with an accountant, the same with a doctor, the same with anybody. So you can acquire skills, and then it's really not that hard.
Yep. And the nice thing about it is when you establish what the mindsets are that you need, because that's where it starts. Okay.
Yeah.
It's like going to do selection at one reconnaissance. You'll never go there unless you've got the right mindsets. Well, so even before James meets you, you've got to have the right mindsets. Otherwise, you won't even put your hand up to see James.
Yeah, you're quite right. Quite right. Would you say that mindset and focus is the same thing, Kev?
No. And I'll tell you why. I'll give you a very good example. Singularity University, where I've been studying for 7 years, it's not a university where you get a degree. You pay your money every year. And what you do is you hear very successful, mostly tech people, telling you how they grow big businesses. Okay. So focus, for argument's sake, could be, I'm focusing on something, but I want to move this improvement in a linear way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that's linear, because you've got a certain mindset. But then when you get another person coming along and they're exceptionally ambitious, well, they like to move something exponentially, 2, 4, 16. So both are focused, both are working hard, but the one has just got a different mindset.
Yeah. That's where all it starts. That's where
Now,
it starts.
another more practical example is that there's 27 million registered companies or thereabout in the United States. 27 million, many dormant. And here's the unbelievable thing. 22.5 million of the 27 are people that have given themselves a job and called themselves now self-employed. They have no one working for them. They might, outsource some of the work to an accountant to do, but I'm talking about proper staff members, team members. 22.5 million are running it all on their own. They rugged individuals, solo entrepreneurs. Then you've got about 4.5 million that employ less than 25 people. So it's only a couple of 100,000 that really scream ahead. And this stuff that I'm going to be sharing with you is for ambitious entrepreneurial people that want to grow a company, not for someone that's just wanting to give themselves a job. Because a lot of people that just give themselves a job, they get caught up in a horrible time trap because they give themselves the freedom to resign from a company. But then their wives later on say, yep, they give themselves also freedom to work 16 hours a day, and then they're on a treadmill. Now, that's not the life. That's not freedom.
No, but there's something interesting which came to mind to me. If you take the 1%, the very, very rich people, not many of them actually have even completed university, and very, very few of them have PhDs. But all of them had the mindset. It had to start with them somewhere.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
To me, the mindset is actually very, very important.
It's where it all starts. Your mindsets will make your world, because mindsets determines your behavior, and your behavior determines your actions. Now, once you are clear on what the mindsets are and you define them correctly, like you're going to be doing in the exercise in that PDF, then you move from quantitative to saying, oh, I need a mindset of being courageous. I need a mindset of this. When you start to score yourself, the brain loves scoring because, I don't like this. I'm on 4. I want to be a 9. And then I just need to now find out who's going to help me to get from a 4 to a 9.
Just to be sure, you don't need to send this PDF thing to us or anything.
No, not at all.
Keep it private. Yep. The same with your little notes in the beginning. Just keep it private. It's not our concern. It's for your own.
Yeah. The other thing I just want to say up front, I'm not a coach. I'm not a consultant. I'm not an advisor. So I'm just sharing the stuff as a business person with everyone. And also, I just want to also let the people know I've got a proper day job, where I'm fully invested and I'm staying busy, etc. So I will dedicate all my thought and effort and thinking to these videos. I will check the comment boxes, obviously below all of the videos, and I'll try and get back to you there as quick as possible. But, we're not seeking work from anyone here. This is our commitment through the channel to the people, because I honestly believe, not just because of the situation in South Africa, but also worldwide, the downscaling of companies is happening more and more and more. So therefore, unlike in the past, more and more people are actually now forced to go entrepreneurial, and it's not in everyone to be entrepreneurial. So we'll talk through that as well as to how you can solve that.
Okay, I think that's such a good ending, Kevin. I think we should just leave it like that. I think
Absolutely.
I'm quite excited, actually. I'm telling you, I'm excited. I want to go and complete that thing.
I'm going to tell you on a lighter note, because the next session, I'll tell you what age I'm going to be living to. So someone said to me one day, he works here in the financial district of London, got a senior position in a bank. And he's sitting, and we're having a barbecue. And he says to me, because he's trying to now plug holes in this concept, he says to me, won't you be disappointed if you don't get to that extra age that you've created for yourself? Won't you be disappointed? I said, mate, listen here, I'd be dead. Really, I'd be dead. So do you think I'm going to be disappointed? I said, but let me tell you something now. It's changed the way I think in the present. So the rewards that I've received has been immediately. Because the minute you determine to want to live that extra amount of years, it then your brain says, right, if you want to get there, you better start changing certain things. So remember in the previous videos, I always spoke about should and shouldn't.
Yeah.
Well, one of the shouldn'ts was, not that I've been a big drinker, one of the shouldn'ts was, well, maybe I shouldn't be drinking. So at the age of 55, I gave up.
Yeah.
Maybe I shouldn't be having so much refined sugar, not healthy at all. Oh, okay, let's look to an alternative. Because the minute those mindsets start to solidify and you've scored yourself where you'd like to be from where you are, it's amazing. Your brain then is on the alert. So wherever you're going, you're hearing things. Oh, that could help me. And your eyes are picking up things because now you're consciously aware.
Yeah, and you're seeing new opportunities which you would not have seen because you didn't know about it.
Exactly.
No, this is mind blowing.
Yep.
That damn simple.
Exactly. So it's your compass and it's your night sights all in one.
Yeah.
Our boer is waar, wyd, wakker.
Well, your brain is a muscle in certain ways. It has to be trained, to think in a certain way. But that's just what entrepreneurs do.
Exactly.
I mean, we normally, as from a legal side, we struggle with the entrepreneurs to get them to sign contracts because they don't have time. They're making money. So,
yeah.
And he's a confident guy too. He always says, if it doesn't work, I'll have something else. He's fully. I see that a lot of my wife.
Yep.
She's
and
like,
we're gonna
if it doesn't work, so what? We will just.
And where these blockages that's holding you back, that goes far beyond an entrepreneurial guy like myself speaking, then France is on standby because those blockages that you've got, he can help you overcome them psychologically.
Yeah, I was absolutely thinking when you talked about blockages now, we shouldn't ask him. Because look, we got him primarily in for nightmares, the normal things. But he should actually damn well mention, and if I forget, you will have to remind us. But if you have certain blockages to get where you want, he can help.
Absolutely. I go to him. He's an ex-buddy from 3-2 Battalion. So, you know what I mean? I feel comfortable with him. He's my buddy. We shoot straight. And he's done the scorecard that's at the bottom of the video. He's done it himself. And he actually gave some suggestions for changes, and I made the changes.